3 children were asleep in the back bedroom. 10 feet away, in the living room, 4 people were being murdered. The children heard nothing. They slept through the entire night. When the police arrived the next morning, the children were still there, unharmed, confused, waiting. The weapons were gone. One of the victims was gone. And the only person who ever confessed to the murders told a therapist, not a detective. The therapist reported it immediately. Nobody was ever charged. April 11th, 1981, Keddie, California. A remote cluster of rental cabins at the foot of the Sierra Nevada mountains. Population under 100, no traffic lights, no drugstore. A single bar called the Back Door, where the residents knew each other by first name. Glenna Sharp, everyone called her Sue, had moved here from Connecticut 18 months earlier with her 5 children after separating from her husband. She was 36 years old, working part-time at a nearby lodge, surviving on food stamps and a small military stipend. The mountains had been good for her kids. They had made friends. They had found something that felt, finally, like a home. That night, Sue was at home in cabin 28 with her youngest boys, Greg, age 5, and Rick, age 10, and their neighbor friend, Justin Smart, 12, who was sleeping over. Her 12-year-old daughter, Tina, had come home around 9:30 after watching television next door. Her 15-year-old son, John, had spent the day in the nearby town of Quincy with his 17-year-old friend, Dana Wingate. They hitchhiked home sometime after 10. Sue's 14-year-old daughter, Sheila, was spending the night in the adjacent cabin, literally steps away, with a neighbor family named the Seabolts. She planned to come home in the morning to change for church. At approximately 7:45 in the morning of April 12th, Sheila Sharp walked across the short distance between cabin 27 and cabin 28 and opened the front door. She found her mother on the living room floor, her brother John beside her, Dana Wingate near the door, all 3 bound with medical tape and electrical cord. All 3 dead. The force of the stabbings had bent a steak knife blade backward 25 degrees. Sue and John had been bludgeoned as well as stabbed. Dana had been strangled. Sheila ran for help. Neighbors came. When they reached the back bedroom, the children's bedroom where the younger boys had been sleeping, Rick, Greg, and Justin were alive, unharmed, awake and frightened, with no understanding of what had happened 10 feet from where they slept. Tina was not in the cabin. Tina was nowhere. The Plumas County Sheriff's Office arrived and immediately compromised the crime scene. The Department of Justice was called, but instead of sending homicide investigators, they sent agents from their organized crime unit. The cabin was not properly secured. Evidence was handled without documentation. The lead investigator later resigned from the case 3 months in and took a job at the Sacramento Department of Justice. A detective who reviewed the investigation years later said, and I'm paraphrasing here, that a first-week academy student would have done better work. Most critically, arriving officers initially failed to register that Tina Sharp had even existed. A 12-year-old girl had been taken from her bed in the night. Justin Smart told them immediately. They didn't document it for hours. By then, whatever trail existed was already cold. 2 men emerged as the primary suspects within days of the murders. Martin Smart, Justin's stepfather who lived in cabin 26, steps away from cabin 28. A Vietnam veteran with documented PTSD and a known history of anger. He had expressed hostility toward John Sharp specifically on multiple occasions. He had been at the local bar that night with his wife Marilyn and his friend Bobo Bede. He reported losing a hammer the day after the murders. Severin John Bo Bede, Smart's friend, who had been living with the Smarts for 10 days before the murders. A career criminal with known ties to organized crime in Chicago. He had, according to Marilyn Smart, developed a fixation on Sue Sharp and had made unwanted advances toward her that she rejected on the night of the killings. Both men were interviewed. Both denied involvement. Martin Smart passed a polygraph examination, though polygraph results are not admissible in court and are widely considered unreliable. Neither man was charged. Bobo B died in 1988. Martin Smart died in 2018. In May of 1981, 1 month after the murders, Martin Smart told something to a therapist he was seeing at a VA hospital in Reno. He told the therapist he had killed Sue Sharp and Tina Sharp. He said, "I killed the woman and her daughter. I didn't have anything to do with the boys." The therapist, alarmed, contacted the California Department of Justice immediately and reported what Smart had said. The Department of Justice reviewed the report and dismissed it as hearsay. No further action was taken. No arrest was made. Martin Smart walked free. He would live for another 37 years. Tina Sharp remained a missing person for 3 years. On April 11, 1984, the third anniversary of the murders, a man collecting bottles in the woods of Butte County found a partial human skull and part of a jawbone near a waterfall called Feather Falls. The location was 62 miles from Keddie. Forensic analysis confirmed the remains belonged to Tina Sharp. She had almost certainly been killed the same night she was taken. She was 12 years old. Hours after the discovery was announced on local news, the Butte County Sheriff's Office received an anonymous phone call. The caller said, "I was watching the news. They were talking about the skull at Feather Falls. I was wondering if you thought of the murder up in Keddie, in Plumas County a couple years ago, where a 12-year-old girl was never found." The caller knew details that had not been publicly released. The call was not investigated. It was not documented. The recording was placed in an evidence box where it sat untouched for nearly 30 years. A deputy found it at the bottom of the box in 2013. In 2016, Special Investigator Mike Gamberg, who had grown up knowing the Sharp family and spent years quietly rebuilding the Keddie case, received a tip about a pond near the crime scene. Investigators searched it. They found a hammer at the bottom. It matched the description of the hammer Martin Smart had reported losing the day after the murders. It had been hidden in a location, investigators noted, that you would only know about if you had specific knowledge of the area. DNA testing was conducted on tape found at the original crime scene. The DNA matched a known living suspect. Gamberg stated publicly that he believed additional individuals beyond Smart and Boubede were involved in the disposal of evidence and the transportation of Tina's body to Feather Falls. He believed some of those individuals were still alive. The Keddie Cabin murders have never been officially solved. The primary suspects are dead. The anonymous caller was never identified. The confession to the therapist was dismissed as hearsay and never pursued. The tape sat in an evidence box for 30 years, and 3 children who slept through the night their mother was murdered have spent their entire adult lives waiting for an answer that has never come. The cabin itself was demolished in 2004. The resort has largely been abandoned. The town of Keddie, population under 100 in 1981, has fewer residents today than it did the night Sue Sharp let her youngest children have a sleepover. Somewhere in the Sierra Nevada, a case with a confession, a recovered weapon, and a DNA match has remained officially unsolved for 44 years. Because the people who could have stopped it in 1981 chose not to.